A single mother, working 3 jobs to support her dying son, walks into a billionaire's charity gala, only to be humiliated, until her hidden medical expertise saves the billionaire's life, forcing him to confront his privilege and her to face the cost of surviving alone. When corporate vultures try to destroy them both, they discover that dignity isn't about money. It's about who you become when everything is taken from you. The rain hammered against Maya Rodriguez's second-hand coat as she clutched her son's hand outside the towering glass entrance of the Crystal Palace Hotel. Through the golden-lit windows, she could see a world that existed in a different dimension. Men in tuxedos, women dripping with diamonds, champagne flutes catching the chandelier light like captured stars. "Mama, it's so pretty," whispered 7-year-old Lucas, his face pressed against her leg. His oversized donated jacket swallowed his thin frame, and Maya's heart clenched at how pale he looked tonight, how the dark circles under his eyes seemed to deepen by the day. "We shouldn't be here," she thought, fingering the crumpled invitation in her pocket. The charity gala invitation that had arrived mysteriously at the hospital where she cleaned floors at night. Her 3rd job after waitressing and data entry. Children's Medical Fund Gala, it read. Someone must have put her name forward. Maybe the sympathetic nurse who knew about Lucas's leukemia, about the mounting bills that were crushing her like a slow-motion avalanche. "Remember what I said, baby. We stay quiet. We get the food, we talk to whoever can help, and we leave. Okay?" Lucas nodded, his small hand gripping hers tighter. "I'll be good, Mama. I promise." The doorman's eyes flickered over them, judging, assessing, finding them wanting. But the invitation was real, and he stepped aside. They entered another world. The grand ballroom was a cathedral of wealth. Crystal chandeliers the size of cars hung overhead, casting prismatic rainbows across marble floors, so polished Maya could see her reflection. Tired eyes, hair pulled back in a practical bun, a dress she'd found at Goodwill and spent 2 hours mending. Among the Vera Wang and Armani, she looked exactly like what she was, a woman who didn't belong. Lucas's eyes were wide, taking in the ice sculptures, the towers of chocolate-covered strawberries, the string quartet playing something impossibly elegant in the corner. "Lucas, don't touch," she started, but he was already reaching toward a tray of canapés, his hunger more powerful than his manners. "These are for guests," a voice said coldly. Maya looked up to see a waiter, young and sharp-featured, pulling the tray away from Lucas's outstretched hand. His eyes raked over them with practiced disdain. "We are guests," Maya said quietly, heat rising in her cheeks. "We have an invitation." "I'm sure you do." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "The children's buffet is in the back corridor. Perhaps that would be more appropriate." Maya was about to respond when Lucas's hand slipped from hers. Before she could stop him, he'd stumbled forward. His coordination was getting worse, the leukemia affecting his balance, and collided directly into a wall of expensive fabric. No, not a wall, a man. The champagne glass shattered against marble. Golden liquid spread across polished black shoes that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent. Time seemed to freeze. Maya looked up and up into the face of Alexander Thornton. She knew him instantly. Everyone in this city knew that face. The billionaire CEO who'd built Thornton Industries from his father's ashes into a tech empire. 34 years old, Forbes 30 under 30, photographed with models and actresses, known for his brilliant mind and his reputation for being absolutely ruthless in business. Cold gray eyes, sharp jawline, a face carved from ice and privilege. "I'm so sorry," Maya gasped, pulling Lucas back against her. "He didn't mean, he's not feeling well. I'll pay for the dry cleaning." "Do you have any idea who you just," the waiter started. "It's fine," Alexander said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Flat, emotionless. His eyes barely registered them as human. "Just watch where you're going." He moved to step around them. "Wait," Lucas said, his small voice somehow carrying in the vast space. "You're sad." Alexander stopped, turned. For the first time, he actually looked at the child. "What?" "You're sad," Lucas repeated, tilting his head with that unfiltered honesty only children possess. "Your eyes are sad. Like my mama's eyes when she thinks I'm sleeping." Something flickered across Alexander's face. Surprise, perhaps, or the faintest crack in that perfect mask. Around them, conversations had paused. People were watching. "Lucas, don't," Maya started. "Kids say the strangest things," Alexander said, but his voice had shifted. Just slightly. Less ice. More something else. He looked at Maya properly, for the first time, and she felt his gaze like a physical weight. "Is he all right? He's very pale." "He's fine," Maya said automatically, the lie she told everyone. "Come on, Lucas. We should." "Are you here for the auction?" Alexander asked, and Maya couldn't tell if it was politeness or curiosity. Yes, we were invited for the Children's Medical Fund." Something changed in his expression. "Your son is sick." It wasn't a question. Maya's hand tightened on Lucas's shoulder. "We should go." "No," Alexander said, and there was a command in it that made her stop. "Stay, please." The last word sounded like it cost him something. They barely made it to the auction display when Maya felt the stares intensifying. A cluster of women in designer gowns had noticed them, their expressions shifting from curiosity to disdain with practiced ease. "Did you see?" one whispered, not quite quietly enough. "That woman and child who ran into Alexander Thornton." "Charity cases," another responded. "I heard they let in anyone now for the tax write-off photo ops." "That dress is from at least 3 seasons ago, maybe more." Lucas pressed closer to Maya's side, and she felt her jaw tighten. Let them talk, she thought. You've survived worse than rich women's gossip. But Lucas hadn't. Lucas was innocent and pure, and she could see the confusion in his eyes as he picked up on the hostility, even if he didn't understand the words. "Excuse me." A thin man in an expensive suit approached, his smile professional and utterly empty. The hotel manager, from the badge on his lapel. "I'm sorry, but there's been a misunderstanding. This event is invite only, and I'm afraid I don't see your names on the primary guest list." Maya's hand trembled as she pulled out the invitation. "We were invited. Look." He barely glanced at it. "Ah, yes, the supplementary list. I see. Well, we're quite full this evening, and given the nature of the event, we need to ensure all our primary donors are comfortable. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in the overflow room. We have a lovely children's area set up with pizza and we're fine where we are," Maya said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I really must insist. Is there a problem?" Alexander Thornton materialized beside them like a well-dressed ghost. The manager's face transformed instantly, shifting from dismissive to obsequious in a heartbeat. "Mr. Thornton, no problem at all. Just ensuring our guests are properly there with me," Alexander said flatly. Is that going to be a problem? The manager's face went through several shades of pale. Of course not, sir. My apologies. Please, let me arrange a table for you. Not necessary. Alexander's eyes found Maya's, and she saw something in them she couldn't quite identify. Challenge? Curiosity? I have a private table. They'll sit there. It wasn't a question. The private table was on a raised platform overlooking the ballroom, separated by velvet ropes and the invisible barrier of wealth. Maya felt every eye on them as they followed Alexander up the steps. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly once they were seated. "I know." He poured water into crystal glasses, his movements precise and controlled. "Your son was right, though. That was perceptive." Lucas was staring at a chocolate fountain with an intensity that made Maya's heart hurt. When was the last time he'd had chocolate? Real chocolate, not the cheap candy she sometimes splurged on. "Lucas, baby, you can have some," she said softly. He looked at her, then at Alexander, asking permission with his eyes in a way that made Alexander's expression flicker again. "Have whatever you want," Alexander said. "All of it, if you'd like." As Lucas carefully, so carefully filled a plate, Alexander leaned back in his chair, studying Maya with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "You work multiple jobs," he said. "Not a question." 3. "And you came here because?" "Because the hospital bills are going to cost more than I'll make in 10 years, Maya said bluntly, too tired for pretense. "Because my son has acute lymphoblastic leukemia and needs treatment I can't afford. Because someone sent me an invitation, and I thought maybe, just maybe, in a room full of rich people giving money to look good, someone might actually help a child who's dying." The words came out harsher than she intended, edged with all the exhaustion and fear and rage she kept bottled up every single day. Alexander didn't flinch. "What kind of work do you do?" "Does it matter? Humor me. I clean hospital floors at night. Data entry in the morning. Waitress on weekends." She met his eyes. "And before you ask, yes, I have a degree. Pre-med. Had to drop out when I got pregnant. And the father." She stopped. "Well, that doesn't matter anymore." "Pre-med," Alexander repeated slowly. "So you wanted to be a doctor?" "Wanted a lot of things," Maya said. "Now I just want my son to live." "Are you a good man?" Lucas's question cut through the tension. He'd returned from the chocolate fountain, his face smeared with chocolate, looking more like a child than he had in months. But his eyes were serious as he looked at Alexander. "Lucas," Maya started. "No, It's okay. Alexander set down his drink. Why do you ask? Because my mama says there are good people and bad people, and sometimes the bad people have lots of money, and the good people don't have any, but that doesn't make them bad. She says what matters is what you do when nobody's watching. Lucas tilted his head. So what do you do when nobody's watching? Maya wanted to die of embarrassment, but Alexander was staring at Lucas with an expression she couldn't read. I don't know, he said finally, and there was something raw in his voice. I honestly don't know anymore. The auction started with the usual fanfare, a celebrity host, jokes that only rich people laughed at, items that cost more than most people's houses. Maya watched the numbers climb. $50,000 for a vacation package, $100,000 for a painting, and felt the familiar weight of hopelessness settling over her shoulders. Lucas, had fallen asleep against her side, his breathing shallow and uneven. She stroked his hair and tried not to think about the blood test results waiting at the hospital, about the oncologist's grave expression, about the experimental treatment that might save him if she could find $200,000 she didn't have. The next item, the auctioneer announced, is a unique opportunity, a private dinner with Alexander Thornton himself, CEO of Thornton Industries. All proceeds go directly to our children's medical fund. Applause rippled through the room. Women leaned forward eagerly. Alexander's jaw was tight. He clearly hated this, but he stood, acknowledging the crowd with a nod that was more obligation than warmth. Shall we start at $25,000? The bidding had reached $75,000 when Maya noticed the woman at the table beside them. She was older, maybe 60, dripping with diamonds, face flushed red. Her champagne glass slipped from her fingers, and she made a small, choked sound, not loud, but distinct. Everyone was watching the auction. No one else noticed. Maya's years of pre-med training kicked in before thought. She was moving, catching the woman as she started to slump forward, her fingers automatically going to her neck for a pulse. Someone call an ambulance, Maya said sharply, loud enough to cut through the auctioneer's voice. She's having a stroke. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Everyone back, Maya commanded, and there was something in her voice, authority, certainty, that made people obey. She lowered the woman to the floor, her hands moving with practiced precision. Face is drooping on the left side. She can't lift her right arm. Fast protocol indicates stroke. We have maybe 30 minutes before permanent brain damage. Maya looked up, found Alexander's face in the crowd. I need aspirin, now. And tell the ambulance she needs TPA, tissue plasminogen activator, the moment she arrives at the hospital. Time is brain tissue. Someone thrust aspirin at her. She crushed it between her fingers, placed it under the woman's tongue. The hotel manager appeared, face pale. Miss, I don't think you should. She's saving Mrs. Wellington's life, Alexander said quietly. Let her work. Maya's hands were steady as she monitored the woman's pulse, her breathing, her pupils. Years of training she'd never finished, knowledge she'd packed away when she'd had to drop out, all of it flowing back like muscle memory. Stay with me, she murmured to the woman. Help is coming. You're going to be okay. The paramedics arrived, and Maya gave them a rapid-fire report that had them looking at her with professional respect. You medical? One asked. Pre-med, dropped out 3rd year. Could have fooled me. You just saved her life. Another 10 minutes and He didn't finish. Didn't need to. As they wheeled Mrs. Wellington away, the ballroom was silent. Everyone was staring at Maya, no longer with disdain or dismissal, but with shock, wonder, respect. She stood there, still wearing her thrift store dress, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading, and felt more exposed than she had all evening. "Mama?" Lucas was awake, reaching for her. She scooped him up, buried her face in his hair. "That was amazing," Alexander said softly. He was standing close now, close enough that she could see the genuine emotion in his eyes. "You were amazing. I just did what anyone—" "No." His hand touched her arm, gentle. "Not anyone. You. That woman is Beatrice Wellington. She funds half the medical research in this city. You just saved one of the most important people in this room, and you did it without hesitation. She needed help," Maya said simply. "That's all that matters." The rest of the evening transformed. Suddenly, people wanted to talk to her. The same women who'd whispered about her dress were asking about Lucas, about her story. Businessmen were handing her cards, offering help, connections, donations. "This is too much," Maya whispered to Alexander, as a venture capitalist pressed a check for $10,000 into her hands. "This is people feeling guilty," Alexander said, but there was something almost like a smile at the corner of his mouth. "Let them. Your son needs it." By the time Mrs. Wellington's family arrived, having been called from the hospital, and offered to cover all of Lucas's medical expenses, Maya was crying too hard to speak. Alexander had guided them to a private suite on the hotel's top floor after Lucas had fallen asleep in Maya's arms during the endless thank yous. The suite was bigger than her entire apartment, all floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city. "You can put him down there," Alexander said, gesturing to a bedroom. "He'll be comfortable." Maya laid Lucas on the bed, tucking him in with practiced care. When she came back out, Alexander was standing by the windows, holding 2 glasses of wine. "I don't drink when I'm with Lucas," she said automatically. "It's sparkling cider." He handed her the glass. "I asked them to bring it up." They stood in silence for a moment, the city sprawling beneath them like a circuit board of light. "Why did you help us?" Maya asked finally. "Really?" Alexander was quiet for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. "My mother died when I was 8, he said finally. "Breast cancer. We had money. My father's company was already successful, but it didn't matter. She died anyway." He took a drink. I remember how everyone looked at us. How they offered sympathy, but no one really saw us. My father threw himself into work, built an empire to distract himself from the fact that he'd failed to save the person he loved most. I know it's not rational, but grief isn't rational. He turned to look at her. "When your son asked if I was a good man, I realized I didn't have an answer. I've spent 10 years building wealth, crushing competitors, winning. And for what? My father died last year, left me everything. And I realized I'd become exactly like him, rich, powerful, and completely alone." Maya felt something shift in her chest. "You're not alone, aren't I?" His smile was bitter. "I have employees, business partners, women who want to be seen with me. But friends? People who actually care whether I live or die, beyond what it means for their stock portfolios?" He shook his head. "Your son saw through me in 30 seconds. Saw what everyone else misses or ignores. That I'm empty." You're not empty, Maya said softly. You're hurt. There's a difference. Tell me about his father. The question caught her off guard. She set down her glass, wrapped her arms around herself. I was 22, third year of medical school. He was a surgeon, brilliant, charming, everything I thought I wanted. Her laugh was hollow. When I got pregnant, he gave me an ultimatum. The baby or him. Said he wasn't ready to be a father. Said it would ruin both our careers. But you chose Lucas. I chose Lucas. She looked toward the bedroom where her son slept. Lost everything else. My place in medical school. Couldn't afford it without his support. My apartment. His name was on the lease. My friends. Turns out most of them were his friends first. She turned back to Alexander. But I got Lucas. And every day, even when I'm exhausted and scared and don't know how I'm going to pay rent, I look at him and know I made the right choice. He's lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one. She wiped her eyes. Sorry, I don't usually. Don't apologize. Alexander moved closer. You're the strongest person I've ever met. You're fighting a war most people can't even imagine, and you're winning. I'm not winning. I'm barely surviving. You saved a woman's life tonight. You raised a child who sees the world with more clarity than anyone in that ballroom. You work 3 jobs and still have enough love left over to make your son feel safe. His hand found hers, warm and solid. That's not survival. That's triumph. They talked until the early morning hours, sharing stories, traumas, dreams that had died, and hopes that somehow still flickered. Lucas woke once, saw them talking, and fell back asleep with a small smile, as if he'd arranged this whole thing himself. Thank you, Maya said as dawn started to paint the sky pink. For tonight. For everything. I should be thanking you, Alexander said. You reminded me that money isn't worth anything if you forget how to be human. Their fingers were still linked. Neither of them had noticed when it happened, but neither moved to let go. What happens now? Maya asked. I don't know, Alexander admitted, but I'd like to find out, if you'll let me. 3 weeks later, Alexander sat in Thornton Industries' glass-walled boardroom and watched his world begin to crumble. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Marcus Chen said, his voice dripping with calculated concern. CFO. Board member, and Alexander was realizing too late. A shark who'd been circling for years. You've been spending company time and resources on a woman and her sick child? The Wellington Medical Foundation is covering Lucas's treatment, Alexander said evenly. I've been helping Maya navigate the system. That's all. That's all? Victoria Hunt leaned forward, his head of operations and Marcus's ally. You've missed 2 critical investor meetings. You authorized a $50,000 donation to a children's hospital in her name. And according to our security reports, She's been to this building 17 times in 3 weeks. I'm allowed a personal life. Not when it affects the company. Marcus slid a folder across the table. Your approval ratings among shareholders have dropped 15%. There are articles, gossip sites, social media, calling you everything from distracted to compromised. Some are suggesting your judgment is impaired. Alexander opened the folder. Inside were printed articles, social media posts, screenshots. Billionaire's new obsession, one headline read. From boardroom to charity case, is Alexander Thornton losing his edge? This is ridiculous. This is business, Marcus said. And the board is concerned. We've scheduled a vote for next week on your position as CEO. The room went silent. Alexander found Maya at her afternoon job, the coffee shop where she worked weekends. She was wiping down tables, looking exhausted, but smiling when she saw him. Hey, I didn't expect you. What's wrong? He told her everything. Maya's face went pale. They're coming after you because of me. They're coming after me because they see an opportunity. You're just the excuse. But even as he said it, he knew the truth. His distraction, his softening, his sudden interest in things beyond profit margins. It had started the night he met her. I should go, Maya said. If I disappear, if we stop seeing each other. No. The word came out harder than he intended. That's what they want. For me to sacrifice the one good thing in my life to protect power I'm not even sure I want anymore. Alexander, I've spent 10 years being the man they wanted. Cold. Ruthless. Alone. He took her hands. You and Lucas showed me there's something more. I'm not giving that up. Then what do we do? His phone buzzed. A message from his assistant. Emergency. Mrs. Wellington wants to see you. Now. Beatrice Wellington was 70. Sharper than any CEO Alexander had ever met, and currently sitting in his office looking distinctly displeased. Sit, she commanded. He sat. I've been watching this little coup attempt by your board with great interest, she said. Particularly because I own 12% of your company's shares through my foundation, which means I have a say in whether you keep your position. Alexander's stomach dropped. Mrs. Wellington, let me finish. She leaned forward. That young woman saved my life, and in the weeks since, I've done my research on her. 3 jobs. Dropped out of medical school to raise her son alone. No support, no safety net, just pure determination. She's remarkable. She is. And you, apparently, have fallen for her, which is making your sharks very excited. Mrs. Wellington smiled, and it was not a kind smile. Good. Let them circle, because what they don't know is that I've been waiting for years for you to be something other than a carbon copy of your father. That night at the gala, I saw something I haven't seen in a decade. Humanity, vulnerability, actual caring. I don't understand. I'm voting to keep you as CEO, she said, and I'm bringing 5 other major shareholders with me. But only if you do something for me. Anything. Stop trying to be 2 people. Either you're the ruthless CEO, or you're the man who's falling in love with a single mother. Choose one and commit to it completely. Half measures will destroy you. She stood. And Alexander, I know your father. He was brilliant, but he died alone and miserable. Don't make the same mistake. That night, Alexander and Maya sat in his office, surrounded by financial documents and corporate records. I don't understand what we're looking for, Maya said, rubbing her tired eyes. Marcus and Victoria are moving too confidently, Alexander said, like they know they've won, which means they have something else, something they're planning to reveal at the board meeting. Lucas was asleep on the office couch. Worn out from his latest round of treatment, the sight of him, so small, so vulnerable, made Alexander's chest tight. "Found it," Alexander said suddenly. Maya leaned over. "What am I looking at?" Marcus has been systematically siphoning funds from R&D budgets for 2 years. Small amounts, hidden in legitimate expenses, but it adds up to almost $3 million. Alexander's fingers flew across the keyboard. "And Victoria's been awarding contracts to a shell company she owns. They're embezzling from their own company, and they're trying to remove me before I find out." "Can you prove it?" "Not without help." He pulled out his phone, made a call. "Sarah, it's Alexander. I need forensic accountants, and I need them tonight. Everything you can find on Marcus Chen and Victoria Hunt." "Yes, I know it's 11 p.m. Triple their usual rate." Lucas woke up around midnight, groggy and confused. Maya rushed to him, but he waved her off. "I'm okay, Mama." He looked at Alexander. "Are you in trouble?" "Sort of," Alexander admitted. "Because of us?" "Because of bad people doing bad things. But we're fixing it." Lucas was quiet for a moment. Then, "My mama says that bad people get away with things because good people are too scared to fight." "Are you scared?" Alexander looked at this child, this 7-year-old with leukemia, who'd been through more than most adults could imagine, and felt something solidify in his chest. "Not anymore," he said. The boardroom was packed. Every board member, major shareholders, even press. Marcus had made sure this would be public, thinking Alexander's humiliation would be complete. They didn't know what was coming. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, "we're here to discuss Alexander Thornton's fitness as CEO. Over the past month, his decision-making has become increasingly erratic." "I have a statement," Alexander said, standing. Marcus faltered. "That's not... You called this meeting to question my judgment. Let me address that directly." Alexander pulled up a presentation on the screen. 3 years ago, I took over as CEO of Thornton Industries. In that time, we've grown revenue by 300%, expanded into 12 new markets, and become one of the most profitable tech companies in the world. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. "But you're right about one thing. I've changed. A month ago, I met someone who showed me that success without purpose is meaningless. That power without compassion is tyranny. That being wealthy doesn't make you valuable. Being decent does." Maya was in the back of the room, Lucas beside her. Alexander met her eyes. "I've been accused of being distracted, unfocused. And you know what? It's true. I've been distracted by discovering that there are people in this world who work 3 jobs and still have more integrity than everyone in this room combined. I've been unfocused because I realized that building empires means nothing if you forget how to build relationships." "This is very touching," Marcus said icily, "but it doesn't change the fact that you've been embezzling from the company for 2 years?" Alexander changed the slide. "Because I have forensic accountants who've documented every fraudulent transfer, every fake contract, every dollar you and Victoria have stolen." The room erupted. Marcus's face went white. Victoria was already standing, reaching for her bag. "Security, please escort Mr. Chen and Ms. Hunt from the building," Alexander said calmly. "The police have already been notified." As security moved in, Marcus found his voice. "You can't do this. You don't have the authority." "Actually," Beatrice Wellington said, standing from her seat at the back, "he does. As of this morning, I've consolidated a controlling interest in Thornton Industries. And I vote that Alexander remains CEO, with full authority to prosecute anyone who's been stealing from this company. A vote was called. It was unanimous. As Marcus and Victoria were led away, Alexander felt the weight of months of pressure lift from his shoulders. But it wasn't the victory that mattered. It was the small figure that barreled across the room and wrapped arms around his legs. "You won," Lucas said, beaming up at him. "You beat the bad guys." Alexander knelt down, eye level with the child. "We won," he corrected. "Your mom, you, and me. We did it together." Outside the building, press had gathered. Alexander stood at the podium, Maya and Lucas slightly behind him. "I have a statement," he said. "Today, Thornton Industries removed 2 board members for financial crimes. But that's not what I want to talk about." He turned, gestured for Maya and Lucas to join him. 4 weeks ago, I attended a charity gala. I met a woman and her son who changed my life. Not because of anything they did for me, but because of who they are. They reminded me that business is supposed to serve people, not the other way around. Maya's hand found his. Effective immediately, Thornton Industries is launching a new initiative, the Lucas Rodriguez Medical Fund, which will provide full financial support to families facing catastrophic medical expenses for their children. We're starting with a $10 million endowment, and we'll be partnering with hospitals across the country to ensure no parent has to choose between saving their child and paying rent. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but Alexander only heard one voice. "Mr. Alexander?" Lucas tugged his sleeve. "Does this mean you're going to help other kids like me?" "Every single one we can find," Alexander promised. The hospital room was painted yellow, Lucas's favorite color. Maya sat beside his bed, watching the monitors that showed his vitals, the IV drips feeding medicine into his small body. But today was different. Today the oncologist had smiled. "The cancer is in remission," she'd said. "Full remission. He's going to be okay." Maya had cried so hard she couldn't breathe. And Alexander, who'd been there for every treatment, every scare, every long night, had held her while she shattered and reformed. Joy and relief, mixing until she couldn't tell them apart. Now, Lucas was sleeping peacefully, real color in his cheeks for the first time in months. "Thank you," Maya whispered. Alexander, sitting on her other side, shook his head. "I should be thanking you. You saved my life before I even knew I was dying. Pretty sure I just spotted a stroke." "I'm not talking about Mrs. Wellington." He turned to face her. "I was dying inside. Successful, powerful, and completely dead. You brought me back." Maya leaned into him, and they sat in comfortable silence, listening to Lucas breathe. "What happens now?" she asked finally. "Now." Alexander's arm wrapped around her shoulders. "Now we figure out what a family looks like. All 3 of us, if you'll let me try." "Lucas loves you," Maya said softly. "What about his mother?" She turned, met his eyes. "His mother thinks she might love you too, if you promise not to buy us fancy things or treat us like a charity case." "I promise to treat you like the equals you are, and maybe take you to dinner occasionally. Nothing fancy, unless fancy is what you want." Lucas stirred, opened his eyes, saw them sitting together, smiled.